The Pennsylvania Fresh Food Financing Initiative is an outstanding example of partnerships implementing health equity programs statewide. This collaboration was formed through initial efforts by the Food Trust, a Philadelphia-based nonprofit.
Right around 1999, 2000, there was actually a research study that came out showing that Philadelphia had the second fewest number of supermarkets in the country. And when we saw that information, that research study confirmed what we were seeing on the ground. At the Food Trust, we run several farmers markets in low-income neighborhoods. And at the markets, the customers were telling us, you know, it's great that you're here 4 hours a week, but that isn't quite cutting it. We have nowhere else to buy fresh or healthy food. Those things combined mobilized us to say, let's bring together the people in Philadelphia that we know can really make things happen, have a conversation, and see if we can do anything to solve this problem.
The Food Trust organized a town hall meeting to present the issues. Various institutions were invited, many of whom had never partnered before. However, the diversity of expertise and resources represented made each stakeholder a valuable contributor.
We were looking at who needed to be at the table, and we wanted it to be a smallish group, and so I believe it was around 30 people or so, and we knew that some of the most important people to be around that table didn't necessarily always talk to each other. For example, groups like the Reinvestment Fund, the community development finance institutions, who really knew about how to do real estate development, make deals. They're excellent at working with folks on the ground to make new projects happen. Also, we brought together the grocers. So actually having grocers be on the task force was somewhat unique, and so that we could listen to them. What are the barriers? Why is it that you're not opening up in particular parts of Philadelphia? And then, of course, public health folks like me, and then bringing together these players brought about some really great conversation. And these weren't folks that had normally always worked together to try to solve problems, but it was a really very dynamic and very powerful group.
The Food Trust ensured that issues were communicated in an accessible manner. The in-person meeting set the stage for a motivating and informative presentation.
We use GIS mapping. So sometimes when you're trying to galvanize or bring attention to an issue, it's important to do this making the case to people throughout the city. In this case, we were really looking at Philadelphia specifically. But to get people's attention, just giving someone a report with a lot of text sometimes can leave people a little not so exciting to present to people. So we used mapping, and the images we found to be very powerful when presenting those to folks. They were saying to us, it was like, in one case, we were showing this to State Representative Dwight Evans, and he said to us, it was like looking at exhibits in a courtroom. It just had that immediate punch. And so what we did with the mapping is we showed the areas in Philadelphia that had the highest rates of diet-related deaths, and we also showed the areas that had no access to supermarkets, and we also showed where the areas were low income. And then we showed that these areas perfectly overlay.
From this initial meeting, key stakeholders across multiple sectors became engaged in the issue and were now committed to finding a solution.
The Food Trust invited all the grocers in the state of Pennsylvania to an initial meeting. They were convening a meeting to talk about something none of us ever heard about, food deserts. And there wasn't a lot of interest from the grocers in the state. But I thought they were wrong. I thought that grocers should solve a grocery problem, and I thought it was a solvable problem. And Representative Dwight Evans and TRF and myself really collaborated after that meeting and said, how can we do this? And that process led to the Pennsylvania Fresh Food Financing Initiative.
Attendees of this meeting also included members of the Pennsylvania state government. Representative Dwight Evans served as program champion and worked to bring additional partners onto the task force.
I joined a part of a task force that was a part with the Food Trust. And in joining that task force, at that particular time, the Food Trust had did mapping throughout the city of Philadelphia and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And as a result of the mapping that they did, they provided that information. They had public discussions. Basically, what I was able to do is help that network come together. And it's a great team.
TRF became involved at the instigation of both the Food Trust, who had done a study to assess the need, and they had presented that study to a group of local business leaders and political leaders. And it was Dwight Evans, the state representative, who decided to champion this need. And he directed them to the Reinvestment Fund because he believed that the Reinvestment Fund's skill in programmatic design, financing, and capital management was just what they needed as an advocacy group, that the two combined would reinforce each other.
And so a task force was assembled to increase access to healthy foods in Pennsylvania. Among others, the major partners included the Food Trust, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the Reinvestment Fund, and key stakeholders such as grocers and community leaders.